The Lord be with you. Some of you have asked about some of the items in my office, so I thought I'd give you the grand tour. Starting with this preacher and his wife, given to us by a couple in a church who wanted to thank us for the work in the church and the care and love we shared. And above it, two things: my work with Christian Action Council for South Carolina, and a commemorative to my father for his time in the Air Force as both a chaplain and as a pilot, and a reminder that he is always in my heart. A commemorative to my mother will soon follow, and she too is always in my heart. Up above, walking my daughter down the aisle, my work with the Boy Scouts. That was in my car for years when I was young, so I kept it. Life is not fair. It is actually a cup of gratitude. Jesus Christ came and died for my sins and yours, and that is not fair, so thank God life is not fair. Eminem playing a saxophone came from another church member, my organist, in fact, when I started playing the horn. And when I started playing, moose started migrating from Canada. A 1-pound dumbbell from my friends at a gym who said they thought I had worked so hard it was time for me to move up in weight. Nice to have friends, isn't it? Sweet girl. This is how old she was when she came to me with her grandmother, and we had to tell her it was time for me to move. And she ran and she hid under a table. We had to go looking for her. And when I found her, I crawled under the table with her, and we had a good talk. And I've always just kept her picture on one of my shelves. Elvis. I think I mentioned the time that Elvis impersonator married us in Memphis. A cat that reminds us of another church member. My time in the Air Force, that was the mug I used most of the time. The great gift of Holy Communion. I suppose it's a much lesser gift, but still a good one, getting an aplenty from the Beacon Drive-In. These hands are special. They were given to me by a woman who lived in government housing. She was on a severely limited income, taking care of 2 children also in her home. And yet she found the dollars it took to make this and give it to her pastor. It is very meaningful to me that someone would do that. Time in Korea, a spoon I carved. A picture of my great uncle. This was on the baptism day of Carrie Beth. There's a young sissy, and in the background, my great uncle. Just happened by accident. He just happened to be walking by at India Hook United Methodist Church, where my brother-in-law was serving. He died 2 weeks later. It is the only picture I have of him. Reminds me of dancing with my daughter at her wedding and dancing with my wife at ours. Our daughter's shoes cast and kept. A pot that reminds me that God mends us and we are stronger in the mended places. A block of wood seems strange, but probably the most precious thing on my shelves. I brought food to a man who lived in a 6-foot by 8-foot cubicle made of plywood in a cinder block building, no heating, no air. Took him food. He ate a can of soup usually off of a hot plate. He'd pour a few bites of soup on it, so it wouldn't spill over, eat it right off the hot plate, and pour a few more. I took him food, and he came running out as I was getting back into my truck. And he said, Steve, I'm sorry, but this is all I have to give you. But I want you to have it. And he handed me this block of wood. It was all he had to give. How many of us give everything? Oh, there we are on our wedding day. Don't look too close. And a pair of shoes. What an odd thing to have on there. They belonged to a man who had lost both his legs to diabetes. And the whole church rallied around him and his wife. And he donated all of his shoes. And he gave me those pairs, and that pair of shoes, and laughed and said, I'm not going to need them anymore. I knew he was going to be okay from that moment on. A picture of Sissy I keep from our wedding day because I love being asked, how does a guy like you get a girl like that? Pictures from ministry at other places. My wonderfully respectful daughter sticking her tongue out at her father. My work with security police and civilian police. I have to have something from Duke here because if my first cousin who played football for Duke as an offensive tackle ever shows up, he's 6'7". He better see something from Duke. Picture my mom and dad kayaking, which I love, with sayings like, oh, hush the noise and cease your strife and hear the angels sing. Or you can't waste time when you're here. The cure for anything is salt water, sweat, tears, or the sea. A picture from Sissy's early days. She is in there dancing. See if you can find her. The Serenity Prayer. It's not just for one select group of people. My daughter, they went to France on a high school trip, and she loves Boston Terriers, so I happened to find this picture. It seemed perfect for my daughter. Kayak paddle. It's actually signed by the man who made it, who taught me how to build a kayak. Diplomas. You can guess what that's about. Chimes that remind me, even though they're from two totally different scales, they are still toned to each other. It's like the church. God takes very different people, different scales, different whatever, and tunes us to each other. And gifts of ministry and signs of my calling, both as a military chaplain and as a civilian pastor. I keep these all in my office for one reason. They remind me that you and I, we know we're in God's hands. But let us always remember that we are also in the hands of each other. All these are memories of people cared for, but also of people who cared for us along the way. And they are deeply in my heart, as you will be as well, because we are God's family. If you need anything during these days, call us, let us know. You are in my heart, but I will also show you my love with the work of my hands. God bless you this day and always. Amen.